Welcome. I'm Debbie Rosas, founder of the NEA Technique, and you're listening to Get In. What do I mean by get in? I mean get into a conversation that is about the body, the gift of a body, and also about life. Now, we don't go through life at all without a body. Everything that we experience happens in this body. So, this podcast is devoted to conversations that will help to awaken your relationship with not just the body, its beautiful design and function, but your body and your life. Each episode is a very unique invitation with a guest, and that guest has wisdom and gifts that they share. Embodied wisdom. That means, yeah, they've practiced, they've learned stuff, but they've embodied it. They walk their talk. And they've learned how to turn this in body experience, the art of moving, into the art of sensing, the art of living fully in your own skin. Today's conversation, it's about trust. Now, who doesn't want to trust their body or their sensation? So, this trust that I'm talking about is the kind that lives in your bones, your breath, your fascia, your muscles, your blood. It's trusting the voice of all of those. We can think that they're separate parts, but they're not. They're all connected. We are this beautiful, layered body of oneness. The word somatic, it means of the body, in the body. We come into life in a body, we go out of life in a body. Our guest today, Bobbie Ellis, has spent 4 decades trusting, listening deeply to the wisdom of the body, and helping others do the same. That's why I love people that help others. They get the message, they get the wisdom, and they share it. She is a very special teacher, a continuum teacher, a somatic yoga guide, and an embodiment coach. She invites us into a way of living where trust isn't just an idea, it's not just a word or a concept, but it is, and you hear me talk about this in NEA all the time, it's a felt sense. It's a measurement tool. It's something that you learn to read the messages of your body, pain and pleasure signals. And how do we do that? Through the lived experience, being aware of any experience that you're having. Together, we're going to explore with Bobbie's wisdom how to return to the body as our most faithful guide. And I say, the most important teacher we will ever have. I'm honored to welcome you, Bobbie. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much, Debbie. I'm inspired to be with you for sure. I have been a fan of yours forever. So
I'm
thank you for
old.
having me. I'm getting up there
Well,
myself.
as a masterful guide, and I say that with deep respect for the work that you've done into the intelligence of the body, how do you see the words science, craft, and art blended into an experience of embodied living?
Well, let me break those 3 things down and then maybe I'll put them together,
All
right?
right.
Because science are things that have been researched and then they're documented, I would say. And science is always on the edge of research because they're always researching further out, right?
Hmm.
And then craft is about how we might put something together or how we might create something or invent it, let's say. And then art to me is a creative expression, right? So, how I do that in the work that I do is um, I'm not sure that I always use science. I refer to scientific explorations if it matters to what I'm doing. However, I think that science is always limited by the research that they do. There's always something outside of science that's not explored yet. And I think that when we're in our body and when we're sensing and feeling in real time, all the time, in let's say a what we call in continuum a dive, and then what we call in yoga a practice, and I like to think of them together. We're in a continual experience of each moment unfolding from a sensory lens, right? So differentiating soma yoga or somatic yoga imbued with continuum from, let's say, other yoga practices, it's really about the person who's doing it. So, how I usually, let's say, craft an experience is I think about some yoga shapes that I'd like to start with. And there's
Hmm.
so many ways to do that shape depending on who's doing it. So, it can be done lying in a bed, it can be done lying on the floor, it can be done sitting in a chair. It could be done standing up because we can shift and change it depending on what the person's need is. And sometimes that's a gateway of finding because I have found that a lot of people don't really have a sense of what they need right off the bat. They have to really be with themselves and cultivate an opening to where they can actually listen. And that takes a little bit of time.
Yeah,
And then the art is what starts to creatively be inspired by them from
exactly.
that sensing and feeling place. Like I'm sensing that this might be a little too much, or I'm sensing this might be a little too little, or I'm sensing something that I'm very curious about, or I'm sensing something that I'd like to leave for now. So that we get to shape and orient ourselves within a practice in such a way that we take our self-agency back so that it
Absolutely. It's
becomes this.
such an important thing. I talk about that as artistic self actualization. How are you going to actualize yourself today with the tools that you have? I'd love for you to share a little bit with our audience about Eminent Conrad and Continuum. A lot of people may not have any understanding of what that is. And when you say, I don't know necessarily that I bring science, I think you bring science into everything, meaning there's a foundation that has been validated as true and real. And yes, the next question is, but what else, right? What else can be created? But I'd love for you to share a little bit and also share a little bit what was that experience like for you? What motivated you to that body of work?
Well, in 1998, I stepped into a 5-day intensive with Emily Conrad, who's the founder of Continuum. Continuum is a body of work, and I'm going to say it in a very small sentence, but it's a very huge thing movement, sound, breath, and sensing and listening. And she was on a quest her whole entire adult life to continue to um, explore what she called continuum. So I worked with her from 1998, the day I walked into that workshop, until the day she died, April 14th, 2014. And in that 5-day workshop in 1998, I came in as a yoga teacher. I also came in with a physical injury from a skiing accident. I had had a skiing accident and I was paralyzed on the left side for a bit. I got some of my movement back, but I was in a fair amount of discomfort and my yoga practice was very limited because of these circumstances. And when I worked 5 days with Emily, uh, I came out of that workshop not only having tools to move through this experience of having had some trauma in my body, also, how am I going to go back and teach yoga? Because Continuum was very different
Yeah.
of the experience, right? Because it was very um, self-agent. It
Yeah.
was, you're invited to do some sound and you're in a shape and then you just move from the inside out on your own for a while. And those whiles on my own got larger and larger as the days went on. So that by the last day of the workshop, we were working on our own with the material that was offered for hours at a time. So it was an incredible first landing. I think I might have been a little uh, taken back after the 5 days because I went back into my life not really feeling so inspired. And I felt like something changed for me personally.
Yeah.
And then how am I going to go back and teach? Because at that time I had a full studio. I had a studio for 26 years in New Jersey here, which I closed during the pandemic. And so it's been a journey for those years about how to formulate continuum with yoga and how to open yoga up a little bit to be able to have a sense and feeling experience for yourself without always being led from the outside, right? So, Soma Yoga is now like a container of experience where people get to explore themselves within the context of whatever's being offered. So, Emily inspired me all the time. And what I loved about her as a mentor, I still see her as a mentor, even though she's no longer here because she speaks to me inside
She
my
was
head.
huge. Yeah,
She was a huge
huge.
force. She was a pioneer, as you are, in the development of movement. And she just was so invested in in this work. And her and I would have conversations about yoga. And she was just so invested in Continuum that it was hard for her to talk about another body of practice. Say, Bobby, you go and do that.
Yeah,
You do
yeah.
that. That's you. That's what you're here to do. I know this, right? And but she was so wonderful because you could speak to her on the phone at any time. She would have lunch with you. We would spend social time together. So it wasn't always just that teacher student experience, which was very different from coming out of the yoga world. Because a
Yeah.
lot of yoga teachers, they're in the front of the room and then they're gone and you don't talk to them at all until they come back. And that's another way of teaching. So I found it very refreshing that she was more accessible to the people that she
Well,
was.
she was so, dedicated to healing,
Yes, absolutely.
and there's a difference between healing and we're gonna do this to condition, right? And, I can really empathize with that moment of finishing a personal experience and having awaken and ahas and thinking, "How am I possibly gonna go back and do that now?" That happened to me when I took my shoes off in a martial art dojo and started moving and stopped jumping up and down. And the very next day, it was like, I can't put my shoes back on. I can't do that. I've got to, what am I going to do? And that takes courage. It really takes courage. And it's also a reflection of that what else kind of question in the universe. There will be people that will come in, they'll study with you, they'll you do your work, and then they're going to want to go off. They somehow feel less freedom within that container. And yet my belief is that the best that you always get is when you have a form that you can experience freedom within, which to me is the design of the human body. All we have to do is look around and see the body variety and the way people move differently, walk differently, sound different, to know that yes, we can have this form, but the freedom to self actualize and to develop that self expression is so profound, and I love that about Emily, that, how does this body do it? How do you do it? That deep exploration. And then yet the yoga practice, whether it's, a John Friend or, Vinny Yoga or whatever, Deskachar or Iyengar, so many different styles, and yet a form
Yeah.
that can be approached and experienced differently. What was the initial style of yoga that attracted you?
I studied hatha yoga,
Okay.
traditional hatha yoga. I worked with Swami Satchidananda before his passing in the 1980s. And, I went off to work with, I would say my most influential teachers who are still alive today. I don't see them very much. Is Angela Farmer, who now is in Greece, and she's 84 now, I believe.
She's phenomenal.
Yeah, and then Donna Farhi, who is in New Zealand. And
Beautiful.
I've worked with both of them fairly extensively, and I don't work with them much anymore because I feel like, I mean, I did some work with Angela over the internet during the pandemic just to be with her because she's so lovely. But I got to a certain point where I had to start developing something that was my own. I had to get on the floor and really start to work and discover within myself because all of the yoga styles that you just mentioned, all of the people that are now coined to have been the leader of those have explored something in their body that they said, even you with Nia, right? You've explored something and you've put something together as a container for someone to dive in. And then those people might take something and take it a little bit further because they're in a discovery and exploration for
You
themselves,
hope so. You hope so.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was really what I started to sense. Not that I don't really love being in a room with a teacher because I do. I really needed to like step away for a little while to start to develop this thing that I call
Well,
soul.
it goes back to form and freedom. There's the form, the language of yoga, but yet how does Bobbie speak that?
Yes,
And
exactly.
how does she sing that?
Yes,
And how do you use that for your own healing, your own conditioning? And how do you express that in an authentic way where you feel that what you're sharing with students is true, it's real, you can stand behind the philosophy of how you're doing what you're doing? All of that is what makes a really strong teacher. And when I hear the word embodied knowledge, that's what I expect, you know.
exactly. Yeah, for true.
When did you I started doing meditation in the 70s and boy, it was mind-blowing. I started with transcendental meditation and it was San Francisco. And I remember going into a room and then I eventually started studying with a teacher named Lazarus. And we would do, long meditations and just incredibly rich. What was your first experience and how has it integrated itself into your work, meditation?
Well, of course, meditation was a part of my initial yoga training. So I was doing just, I would call it breath awareness meditation because that was the primary place of anchoring in a meditation process in my initial training. And then I studied with Jack Kornfeld and Tara Brach, and
Nice.
I did some work with Pema Chowdhury, um, and um, I'm blanking on his first name, but the last name is Siegel. And now, how meditation is for me is it's more spontaneous.
Uh-huh.
So I do practice something specific with my husband. We do it together, which is nice for the relationship. But if I'm meditating on my own, I usually movement is always involved in some way,
Okay.
meaning when I start with an awareness practice and then I move my body some. And then I end with an awareness practice. And the awareness practice is what's happening right now. And is it helpful? And then I always have the anchor of the breath to go back to. And I always have the experience of sensation, which I have rode on for so many years that it's hard not to have it come into my awareness when I'm meditating because of continuum. To
Sure.
me, continuum is the deepest meditation because it's about following something that's already happening, but it's not verbal. And it connects you not only with your body, but with the planet and then also the cosmic experience because I remember early on in my yoga training where they would say, um, you're one with all things. That was a primary teaching in yoga, right? Not separate, but a part of everything. And that was just a concept for me. The concept. Yeah, I know that. I'm not separate. But in Continuum, I actually experience it like from a sensory way of feeling gravity in the ground, of sensing space, of experiencing the infinite empty fullness of the sky, right? So I get to really feel that on a sensory level rather than just think about it. It had
And
shifted a
that's
lot.
the gift of slowing down,
Yeah.
which, boy, does our world need and people's nervous systems need. Slowing down could be aggravating to a lot of people, but once you drop into it and once you get that place of stillness and what it allows you to access, it's just you gotta have another bite.
Well, that points it to, working with, I would say, modern people, people who are driving themselves every day, all day at a nervous system level that's so sympathetic, meaning, parasympathetic or sympathetic that it's almost on overdrive all the time.
Yeah,
Most people have trouble sleeping. Most people have issues with anxiety, depression, and then we have the trauma response that can happen in the body. So what I usually do if I'm teaching, let's say, just an hour and a half class, I rarely teach an hour class. I'll spend 15 minutes at the gate at the opening of the class, just having people settle for 15 minutes with small, subtle movements, maybe, but really getting into their body and sensing gravity because gravity in space is our original movement teachers. We can't go anywhere if we're not anchored in gravity because then we wouldn't be able to move away from gravity, right? So gravity in space has been my teachers. And so then I offer that to my students to sense that in the beginning of the class. And then when they start moving into what might be an asana practice and what might be just open movement, which is what I call it, have a better sense of themselves. And they're connected to something that's not verbal. And that seems to help quite a bit.
yeah. That nonverbal wisdom, that primal wisdom that lives inside of us is so profound. Our first teacher, as you said, that teaches us to, you know, roll over, sit up, reach, crawl,
Yeah.
eventually walk and sense ourselves on the earth, but also free in this beautiful space. Um, when you use the words embodiment coach,
Yeah.
um, what, you know, in my opinion, the word coach has been like just overused like insanely. Um, what do you mean if you say, "Hey, I'm an embodiment coach, come to me." What am I going to get?
Well, let me explain to you why I use those words.
Okay.
I couldn't find any other word that
That's a good reason.
describe it, right? So what I usually do is I create an environment to explore what it means to have a body, what it means to be in a body. And there's lots of different ways that I may do that depending on what starts to happen with the person that's in front of me. And usually coaching is more one-on-one rather than a group experience, right? Although I think I'm always coaching, I guide people. But if I say embodiment guide, it's like some people can't really catch that. So I use the word coach, right? So what I'm doing is I'm coaching them to look more inward from a sensory level. Like, what do you know? And the first place, if people have a hard time sensing themselves, like I don't feel anything. I often have them start to notice the movement of breathing from the inside out. Like, where do you notice it's moving in your body? And it could be, well, I feel it a little bit in my upper chest. And then I have them bring their hands there and just track that for a moment, meaning follow it. And then see if you notice that it spreads anywhere else. And they'll say, oh, yeah, well, now I feel it a little bit in my upper arms. I'm like, okay, so bring your hands there or as close to there as you can.
Yeah.
Right. And then I'll say, okay, so now be there for a while. And then what do you notice? Well, now I notice my ribs under my arms are moving. So they start to create a sensory world through breathing because breathing is always happening and it is movement and it is coming from inside, not outside. Right. And then I might use things like, and I think that Mia can use this too, if I may, because I've done a lot of Mia, by the way, where you're kind of pushing away from you're pushing off the floor, you're using your body more to roll on the floor and to really feel the breath and the reach. Like when I bring my body towards the ground, there's going to be a part of my body that's moving away, and how do I track that so I can feel what's going on. And it's not real, there's no goal orientation in this kind of experience. It's really about these foundational ways of building in something that's more embodied to move from, right? So before I even give them something, what I would call specific to do, which is I usually don't do that, but I create a container maybe of a shape, like can you bend your knees and bring your arm out this way? And then they start there. And then where they go is totally their own artistic, creative expression once they have a sense. And the sense takes a while because most people live life through thinking.
Well, we're taught that. We're born sensing, and then we start becoming educated in a dysfunctional method that separates sensing from thinking instead of integrating the thinking with the sensing. And you're right, then we end up having a whole society that is disassociated from their body and believes that the wisdom comes from what they think.
Yeah.
And, um, and then as we know, it adds to dysfunction and illness and lots of other little things that come along with not being in your body. Um, you say the map is not the territory. What do you mean by that?
So let's say I'll create a map for you, right? So if you were in a space with me and we were going to work together, I'd say, I'd like you to, if you're able to, lie on the floor and bend your knees, put your feet on the ground, and just start to sense your legs and maybe drift your knees from side to side. So that might be a map. So I'm guiding you in something. And then I'm just going to say, okay, now see where it is that your body wants to go as a sensing feeling way rather than a guiding from the outside way. So that would be more of the territory. So they may move their knees more to the left, they may extend one leg, maybe they'll take that leg up off the floor, maybe they'll let the other leg lay straight, maybe they'll start to turn their body to the left or to the right, maybe they'll lift their head. That's not anything, that's a map, that's the territory that they're starting to explore from the little map I gave them as swing.
Yeah, I love that. In Aikido, we talk about having those two positions. You're either the leader or the follower. And you really want to know what role you are functioning from and to be 100%, committed to that. So following your hand or following your nose, right? Or leading your hand, right? Two very different experiences. Um, can you explain for everybody how you view the body as a fluid filled matrix? And how understanding that as a concept, how can that change the way that we move?
Well, usually when someone starts to move, they have a lot of ways that their body has been contracted from, let's say, not moving, or more pattern forms of movement that they might do all the time, right? So the body gets a little bit compressed. And it also gets compressed. You mentioned this earlier in speed. When you're moving really fast, either mentally or physically or both, your body is becoming more condensed. Okay. So when the body is more condensed, think about it from, let's say, a river bank or a stream. The closer the sides are, the less movement the water has. And everything in the physical body is moves through fluid exchanges, if you think about it, right? So everything in the body is moved through fluids, blood, lymph, digestion, your cerebral spinal fluids. There is interstitial fluids. Everything is made out of different degrees of solidified fluids. So the bones are 40% fluid, right? Your organs are 80% fluids. So your body is made of water because initially, when the sperm and the egg came together, it was just swirling cells in liquid. And then there was some intelligence that came in and created the primitive streak, which became your spine. And so the primitive streak is just a streak of coalesced cells that's like a line, right? And then those cells from the intelligence of, let's say, the cosmic experience or the wisdom of something greater than anything says, I'm going to make Debbie's eyes. I'm going to make this shaped nose. I'm going to give this person these arms and hands, right? And so it starts to coalesce from there. But originally, we are made from fluid and we are still a fluid filled sac. And um, fascia, which is all fluid, is very small tubes webbed together of water. So if you look at fascia microscopically, it's these tubes of water and there's water dripping off of it. So when your body gets too compressed, the fluid can't move as greatly as it could to give your system its optimal experience. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's why I say, you know what? The movement creates that squeeze and release that hydrates the body, and becoming aware of how fluid movement can feel different than linear movement,
Right. Yeah. And
and
you,
allowing the body to move fluidly
yeah,
and freely.
yes. And you can move quite dynamically in a fluid state. For many, I'm not going to say everyone, but for many, it takes a while to get there. So you're using your body different than muscle skeletal, right? Your muscles are mostly fluid. So you're not like contracting your muscles in order to lift your arm. You're using this fluid expression and then feeling the support of gravity in space to take your arm out. So it's a very different experience that gets grown in when you practice it.
Yeah, very, very different experience when I was studying Taekwondo versus studying Aikido. But hands down, so different.
Yeah.
And again, because of the Aikido emphasis on energy. And if you want to have power, you have got to be fluid or you're not going to have power. It's a very, very different experience. You know, I mentioned that we would talk about trust. And I often say that I think the reason that the universe put me in this position to receive information I call Nia was really to learn how to trust my body, to trust living in my body, to trust my body with another body, And, it's a big word and it is subjective. We can trust our feet, but do you trust your knees? We can trust our hands, but do you trust your shoulders, right? Or you can trust yourself, but you trust another person. I mean, it's a big, big word. But let's talk about trust in the body. Do you have was your work with Emily a moment where you said, wow, I'm, I'm not following something from the outside. I'm not doing a posture, but I'm learning to trust my body. Was there a relationship there? If not, when did it happen for you where you went, wow, I'm developing trust with my body?
That's a really great question, and I appreciate you asking it because I think it's important. Um, so I want to talk about a word called titration. So I was just speaking to another colleague in Continuum the other day, and we were talking about working with people who have had trauma, which is basically everyone
Yeah,
level.
exactly.
Right. And so titration means um, I'm taking it to the place where I can integrate myself. So in the beginning of this type of movement, which is more from the inside out, with a container of a guide or a coach, um, you're invited to really listen. And I don't mean listen hearing wise, I mean listen sensation wise of because your nervous. Let me back up a little bit. Your nervous system is always um, trying to keep you safe, right? And so it's the nervous system that starts to get stimulated when we go into areas that is registered as this isn't safe. I can't trust it. Right. And what happens to a lot of people that I have worked with is they'll go to a place that feels familiar about something else that may have been, that may have created something that was not trustworthy, let's say. And so it reminds them and they back up and the system starts to become afraid. And so the nervous system is patterned that way, right? So what's really important is to create an environment where you get to titrate, like you get to go out a little bit and your nervous system starts to register, wait a minute, there's something, this isn't that. This is this. I'm here now. And so it's creating the environment of being present and starting to grow in the capacity to do that without storylines. It's really, really key to the development of trust is to be here right now doing this and being able to titrate, back up, move forward, rest, come back in, roll on my side, be on my belly for a while, come back, do something else. You see? So that over time, because the nervous system, and I know I'm going to say something that's huge, but interesting. The nervous system is always tracking you because it doesn't want you to die. It's,
Right.
it's, it wants to keep you alive. Right. And what it does is it sometimes is too good of a guardian because it's been guarding you against this perhaps sensation that feels familiar to the nervous system. It's like, oh, no, 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 we're not going to go there because that's that. But once you start to do body mind integration, it's like, well, wait a minute. This sensation is simply a sensation. And can I titrate this so that I can actually integrate it all the way through?
Yeah.
And then your system starts to register, oh, okay, I can tolerate that. I can actually experience it and I'm okay. And then you can go to the next level and then the next level and the next level. And there were times especially moving through the trauma of an accident where I had this, I was paralyzed on the left side. It was very slow. I had to slow down a lot
Yeah.
and take a few days to really integrate my experiences and really feel my body again. That was underneath whatever trauma was or whatever the experience was that was keeping me from the ability to be there. And so that's a question, like, what is keeping me from the capacity to do this is a question. And sometimes it's not verbal.
I love that statement. What's keeping me from being here? Right?
Yeah.
What is it that's keeping me from being here
It's usually
versus
something
being
that,
in that freeze, flight, fawn, I mean, so many different responses that we have to trauma. And today, you know, everybody, I think, as you said, has some form of trauma. Nobody goes through life without having some sort of painful traumatic experience. And one is not bigger than another one. Again, it's subjective to the individual, but how do we manage that and how do we not have it control or keep us held back is really what it's about. That's that self agency that you talk about. Talk a little bit more about that. And when and how did you say, wow, I haven't been activating self agency? If I do, this is going to happen.
well, when I first came into doing Continuum, I was certainly had a lot of other teachers' voices in my head in terms of the how and the what to do, which is very helpful. So it's not an either or,
Right.
but it was the only thing. And I was working with what was codified as correct, let's say. To do it correctly, we have to do it this way or that way. And and I started to and even before Continuum, I was questioning a little bit of that because I was never truly a follower. I was always questioning. I got in a little bit of trouble doing that at certain vectors
Right.
of my yoga experiences. But I think that um, can you ask me the question again? I just got sidetracked in my head.
Yeah. Self agency, when was there a moment? I'll use myself for an example. When I started doing martial arts and I realized that, okay, so there's a technique, but I have to use that technique to protect myself, which means there's a technique, there's a craft, but the craft has to be put through this system, has to be organized. So I have to have a self agency to utilize the tools in the craft to protect myself.
Yeah, yeah. So the way self agency would work, let's say in a moment for me was that 5 day workshop.
Uh
I
huh.
could that was many moments of self agency because I found myself, a lot of because I was in a room full of I don't know, there was 85, 90 people there, and I was always opening my eyes and looking around, and most people have their eyes closed, and everybody was doing something different.
Yeah,
And
I
I was
love
used
it.
to being in a yoga class
Yeah.
where everybody was like in the same pose. And then when that pose was completed, everybody would go to the next thing, right? And there was always this kind of flow state or posture sequencing that we would do. And so I was always opening my eyes saying like, Well, what am I supposed to be doing?" And then I would see, and it gave me this permission
Yeah.
to start to organize myself differently. And the other thing that I want to mention is Continuum uses a lot of sound. And what sound does, we're using vocal sounds and they don't have any connection to, let's say, chanting or bijou
Right.
mantra or anything like that. They're just simple sounds, although they can resemble some bijou mantras, which I found that um, intersection in terms of yoga and Continuum. But the sound breaks up density and mass in the system, and it allows you to sense the movement of inner fluids. And the fluid systems in the body has a wisdom all its own, outside of the wisdom of thinking or organizing or planning, or I don't know what else you would use to describe another way of being, but most people don't follow fluid sensation as a leader. And once you get the
And yet finding that flow, finding your flow is your rhythm, your timing, your breathing pattern. It's so, so vital to
yes,
that in-body experience, that agency that, that we're talking about. I know that, when I first created Nia, and I wanted to speak at a convention, and I sent the tape, and the head of the convention came back and said, "Well, absolutely not. People are not following you, and they're not doing the same thing. This is not functional." And I went, "Well, actually, it's the opposite. It actually is. It is functional." But even back then, just wanting to present the work barefoot. Oh no, it's dangerous. People need shoes. So thank goodness for people like Emily and like myself and like you, having the courage to say, you know what, variety, all we have to do is look around. In me, I say it's the body's way. And I validate everything I do. It has to be validated by the science of the body, its form and function. All you have to do is look around at the planet and know that variety, there may be one map of a human form, but there are no two alike. And so, what makes us think that our movement should look exactly like someone else? And that's that self agency. How do I do a downward dog? How do I, how, what is my yoga, right?
yeah, yeah.
How do I feel it? How do I know I'm in it? And how am I getting vitality, health, and well being from it? Cultivating that relationship. Um,
I wanna just, mention something because it keeps coming up in my head. You mentioned education, the word education. So, are are you aware of the root of that word?
well, tell everybody.
Well, the root of the word is educara, which is actually a midwifery term, and it means to be present for the birth of son, right? So if we're educators, if we're teachers, we have to offer some room for people to keep birthing themselves forward. So I think that that's a really beautiful thing around
It's
it.
very, very important. And, we in our educational system, we learn a lot of things. And when it comes to body, it's associated with sports or taking a health class or sex ed. That's where it stops. But in
Yes.
terms of really learning and exploring, how does our body move? How does our body emotionally express itself? What is the sensation of logical thinking? What is the sensation of creative thinking? What is the sensation of healthy, unhealthy? What's the sensation of enough, right? Or too much? That kind of language is so important for the self agency of ownership and protection over one's body. That's what we should be teaching. How to be in your body, how to have self agency, make choices and decisions that respect the body, that take care of your body, and that allow you to have an in body experience that is physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual and unique to you as an individual. Um, what's the most profound shift, right? I've taught thousands of people, and yet there are these moments that stand out of witnessing a profound shift. And as a somatic practitioner, as a teacher, that's like the best gift that I can receive is to witness the power of what happens when someone gets in their body and they start living in it. And they start having a relationship with their own body and a conversation with their own body. What's the most profound shift you've seen in someone through your soma yoga, for example?
Think about that for a moment because I don't want to just speak off the top. I don't know that it was, I can't think that it's an individual, but I can think of it as a group process where,
Okay.
let's say, some people come to my yoga where they've done other forms of yoga. So they're very more alignment based, which is not a bad thing. And they're just very specific in terms of what they're doing with their body, and they always do it the same way. When I do a downward facing dog, I do it this way. When I do cobbler's pose, I do it that way, right? So opening up permission, time, and space, and settling in and becoming a little bit more fluid focused has allowed me to observe and sense and feel from my own body to theirs, because transmission is always happening, that they're starting to sense themselves within the structure of what we call a posture. There's all of these very small micro movements that start to happen from the inside out that actually shifts and changes how they're doing the pose. And their breathing changes and regulates without even have to do any, let's say, systemic pranayama. Because once the body is more open and fluid is moving, everything regulates on its own. It's almost like you're creating an environment for health to rise naturally.
Yeah, I say that, when it comes to yoga, every posture is a piece of clothing and you're going to put it on, but you want to feel that you can move in it. You want to feel that
Exactly.
it hangs where it should hang, like couture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, you don't want it to feel stiff, like it has too much starch, right?
Exactly.
It
That's
has
right.
to breathe, it has to be fluid, it has to move,
Yeah.
and it has to bring out your best features, which is what great couture does.
Absolutely. That's right. That's right. And there's a lot of anatomy that I've explored where there's so many different shapes inside the body. Like, for
Oh,
example,
there's no 2 that
the
are the
top,
same.
yeah, like the top of the femur bone. Okay.
Yeah,
So there could be a really big femur bone and then a very small hip socket. Now, if you're in a very specific yoga practice, you're going to be instructed to move your leg in a very specific way
right, turn
based
those
on
toes out, yeah,
well, but your femur bone won't do it. So you're
yeah,
forcing something
yeah,
within your structure that's actually going to create some damage.
yeah,
So that's really important to remember as a person, like, because so many people don't know the size of their thigh bones, but they can sense the space between the bone and the socket and where they can go and where they can't go. And then they can start to sense, is this are my ligaments tight? Do I feel tension in here? Is it dry in here? Do I lack motion because of I haven't been moving like this? Or is it restriction because this is actually the shape of my body? That takes a while on the silent level of just paying attention, unless you could get an x ray of your whole body, which a lot of
yeah.
people don't do.
Well, even then, that's just a picture,
Right.
I've been privileged to study with, my anatomy teacher, Gil Headley, for many
Yeah.
years.
Me too. Me too.
So, yeah, it's my treat. I give it to myself every year to go and spend, a good week there, and, to have the experience of seeing beneath the skin and really observing no 2 are alike,
Exactly.
and then to really respect your unique design and to develop that relationship, with your body, its voice, its sensory messages that it's constantly sending that says, slow down, speed up, that was too far. Now you could do a little bit more. that listening relationship is so very, very important. Um, I know that you offer teacher training and retreats and women's circles. What do you love about being in that leadership role?
I like what happens in the process within the group. I like to, um, I do have mostly women in the things that I do, and I do offer women's only programs, but I do have some men as well. But I just love the shifts that start to occur in each individual person because they're given a tremendous amount of permission to first of all slow down, which we already established together. Everybody needs that. And then just to be able to listen a little bit more deeply to something that's underneath the surface of just general thinking and watching the transformation happen in a group process, especially in retreats and in teacher trainings, because I've done 500-hour teacher trainings. I've done 300. I've done 200. I've mentored people, just small groups. I've done one-on-one mentorships for continuing education. I do a lot of continuing education in the realm of somatic work within the structure of yoga because I think it's really important for a teacher to have that in their tool bag.
Absolutely. Yeah.
When I see them teach initially, and then they do some of this work, and then they teach again, there's just so much more of the soma,
Yeah.
so much more of the living expression of the body within the context of how they speak,
Yeah.
what they're moving people towards, how they hold a container. So that's really beautiful.
How
And
do
then
you, when you promote women's circles, how do you deal with gender?
you mean if there is a transgender
Uh huh.
person?
Yeah.
I include them and I let everyone know that that is part of the inclusion of that.
Beautiful.
I think it's a very large question, and if someone in the group has some challenges with it, um, I would speak to them privately.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's part of the world today. And as a leader and a facilitator, it's something that we talk about as leaders, right?
Yes.
And inclusivity, creating an environment of safety, belonging. Really, really important. Well, I can't thank you enough for this wonderful opportunity to share and your beautiful wisdom and reminding us the power of the body, the power of trusting, the power of listening, the power of coming within to move with our body. How and where can people connect with you and learn more about you, Bobby?
Well, I have one website that's more for training, which is somayogatraining.com.
Okay,
And then my personal site is somactr.com, which is short for center. That was the name of my studio, and I just kept the name of my website. You can also reach out to me through somawithbobby@gmail.com if you want to email me. Um, I don't know if you want me to mention a phone number, but I love to have
yeah,
conversations
no,
with
this is good. So there's somayogatraining.com, or there is somactr.com, or Soma with Bobby, and it's Bobbie, everybody, at
correct.
gmail.com.
That's it.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Dick.
Awesome. Well, you can find out more about me and Nia technique, body, and life workout, practice, and lifestyle by visiting my personal website, debbierosas.com. You can sign up to receive free articles, motivating and inspiring. I publish 2 every single week. There's lots there that you can use to inspire your students. Writing, poetry, weekly motivation, and then on neanow.com. This is where you can come and find out where's a Nia teacher in my area? Where can I take a training? We always begin at the Art of Sensation training. Both online and in-person experiences are available. And then Nia on Demand, you can go and sign up and get 2 weeks free to experience the Nia experience. We have hour-long experiences, workouts. We have 20 minutes, even 5-minute, what we call dance breaks, meditations, and you'll find that the podcasts there, you can watch them, not just listen. We always have new events coming and going, so stay in touch. And thanks again. Remember that this is probably the most important time for us to get in, to stay connected, to listen. Be kind to yourself. Treat yourself and others well. This experience, well, it's a sensation. It's a somatic experience. Living in the body, a felt sense, and learning to trust your body. It's worth all the time and attention that you give to it. Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks so much, Bobbie, again. Have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you next time.